Hello, this is Little Green Ghouls, and welcome to Fear Street Explored, where your worst nightmares live. This week, I'm excited to visit Ski Weekend. We're on a bit of a hot streak with these recent Fear Street books, and Ski Weekend keeps it going. This book does a nice job leaning into the isolated setting, and has a handful of genuinely unsettling moments in it. We even get one really weird one involving wrestling, and have a character performing an impromptu autopsy. It's definitely worth checking out if you haven't yet. This 1991 cover is pretty great. It gives us a nice look at most of our main characters, and a glimpse of this old ski lodge they're trapped in, complete with a creeper lurking outside. I also love that each of them are wearing perfect chunky 90s sweaters. That white one in particular feels extra 90s to me. But let's check out the full blurb on the back. Snowbound. Red Porter was a stranger they'd met on their ski weekend, but Ariel Monroe, Doug Marr, and his girlfriend Shannon Harper were grateful he was there when they set out for home on the icy roads. Thank heaven for Red. He spotted the Hilltop Lodge when they were stranded by the blizzard. He took charge when they stumbled into the strange surroundings, scared, tired, and looking for refuge. But can he save them when their refuge becomes a trap? Suddenly, their hosts are acting very sinisterly. Doug's car is gone, the phones are dead, and the house is full of guns. If they steal one, maybe they can escape, until a shot is fired and the real terror begins. Okay, let's start this summary. The book opens with an introduction to Ariel, who is not enjoying her car ride through some snowy mountains. Her friend Doug is driving too fast for conditions, so they're sliding all over this icy road, and his girlfriend Shannon isn't too pleased with him either. Red offers to help drive since he's used to driving in the snow, but Doug finds this emasculating. We learn Red is just some guy they've known for a couple days. They met him up at a ski resort, and I guess they're giving him a ride back down the mountain. Ariel thinks Red is nice enough, but she still wishes her boyfriend Randy was there, and it's a bit of a point of contention because Randy wanted to return to Shadyside a day early so he could make it to a basketball game. No one else wanted to leave though, and it resulted in a huge fight between Ariel and Randy. He ended up taking a bus back to Shadyside alone, and right after this big fight is when they all first met Red. But they're currently driving down this mountain, and it's getting worse by the minute as it becomes apparent they're in a full-on blizzard. Doug can't see shit through all this snow, but that doesn't stop him from driving like an asshole. At one point, he nearly drives them right off a cliff edge. Doug is arrogant and full of bravado, so I'm sure he'll be fun to deal with this whole book. After literally 12 pages of tense driving in the snow, Red suggests that they get off the main road and onto one of these side country roads he knows of because he claims they'll get plowed faster, so they'll be safer. That doesn't sound factual to me, but okay. They turn down this country road, and soon they're nearly run off the road by a semi-truck. They manage to squeeze by it and celebrate, only to have the car sputter to a stop moments later. Doug is able to get it started back up, but Red points out that the engine is overheating, so they're not going to be able to drive for much further. Red then spots a house up on a hill and suggests they stop there for the night, first risking breaking down in the middle of nowhere and freezing to death. They all reluctantly agree to this, and Ariel thinks she'll at least be able to call her parents and update them. They park the car at the bottom of the hill and head up towards this house. Red assures them it'll be fine to stay because people are much friendlier out in the country versus the city. When they reach the door, they're greeted by a man named Lou Hitchcock and his wife Eva. He says they're welcome to stay and wait out the storm. This house used to be an old ski lodge, so they have plenty of room. Eva seems a little uncomfortable with the idea of having 4 strange teenagers in her house, but Lou seems happy for the company. He's also a creeper and comments to Shannon how she's not too bad and that he loves redheads. Calm down, Lou, she's like 15. Doug and Shannon are able to use the phone to call their parents, even though the line is super staticky. When Ariel goes to call her parents, she gets the message machine, and is disappointed because she feels really uneasy about this whole situation. They offer to let Red use the phone too, but he says his parents aren't expecting him home for a couple days anyways. Ariel then notices Lou is reading a gun catalog, and this leads to all the boys bonding over hunting. Lou leads Doug and Red over to his gun cabinet and shows off various guns. Doug is busy playing around with them like a jackass, when Lou nonchalantly mentions that he keeps all his guns loaded and ready to go. Lou then shares a story about his friend Harvey, who loved to hunt in the snow. That is until he was out hunting one snowy night, and another hunter accidentally blew his brains out. Lou cackles while he tells this story like it's the funniest thing, and Ariel just stares at him concerned that he could find the death of his own friend so hilarious. She ends up wandering into the kitchen to ask Eva to make her some tea. She's then perplexed as she watches Eva struggle to locate the tea, and briefly wonders why she doesn't know where it's at in her own house. Eva heads upstairs, and Doug walks into the kitchen to check on Ariel, when they are both startled by a sudden gunshot right behind them. Turns out these two don't actually know what a gunshot sounds like, because what they actually heard was just the snap of a mousetrap. Ariel feels bad for the mouse, but Doug just laughs because he's too manly for feelings. There is then a loud crash outside, and this time something actually happened. Lou investigates and reports that a large tree branch crashed through the top of the porch, so Doug and Red hurry to help Lou move it. Lou has had quite a few beers, so he's staggering around this house, and Ariel notices that his winter jacket seems to be several sizes too small for him. So it seems like Stine is trying to hint that maybe Lou and Eva don't actually live in this house. When the boys all return inside, there's been some sort of disagreement on how this branch should have been moved because Doug and Lou are arguing. Ariel thinks this is more macho bullshit until Shannon needs to get Doug to calm his tits because otherwise they're going to find themselves thrown out. Shannon is nervous because Lou has been eyeing her up and down since she got there, so she's worried Doug will get jealous. She's also just worried because that's creepy on its own. They all calm down and eat some chili. Then Ariel asks Eva where she'll be sleeping. She leads her up to a small upstairs bedroom, and within a couple pages, Ariel's fast asleep. She then awakens in the middle of the night to the sound of the front door slamming shut. At first, she isn't sure if somebody came inside or went outside, but she soon hears movement downstairs. She creeps over to the balcony above the living room and can hear somebody shuffling around in the dark. She then hears footsteps headed up the stairs. This really freaks her out because she's convinced herself it could be a drifter or some sort of horror movie killer like Jason. Unfortunately for her, Ariel is not very proactive in this situation, so she just stands there until the mystery person is right in front of her. However, it just ends up being Red, who looks half frozen. They head into Ariel's room, and he shares that he overheard Lou and Eva having a huge fight in the room next to his, and that he's pretty sure he heard Lou hit Eva. This freaked him out, so he decided to take a quick walk outside. I don't think taking a midnight walk in a blizzard is something I would do in this situation. Ariel and Red then stare at each other for a bit, and are soon in full-on makeout mode. Ariel stops pretty quickly because she's like, oh yeah, I have a boyfriend, oopsies. Red heads back to his room and Ariel falls back to sleep. The next morning she wakes up and is happy to see that the snow has stopped, but is disappointed that the roads haven't been plowed yet, so they're still snowed in. She heads downstairs and everybody's sitting around having breakfast, except Eva. Ariel asks where she is, and Lou just says he's letting her sleep in this morning. This concerns Ariel for like half a second, and then she's just like, oh well, not my problem, I'll be out of here in a couple hours. Doug, Red, and Ariel then decide to go check on the car, while Lou keeps insisting there's no point in doing that until the roads are cleared. And Ariel starts to get the sense that Lou doesn't want them to leave. Outside, Ariel and Red flirt in the snow for a bit before reaching the bottom of the hill. They quickly realize they're all in trouble because the car is no longer on the side of the road where they left it. They wander around and eventually locate it at the bottom of a ravine because it's been knocked right off the edge at some point in the night. Ariel immediately suspects Lou, but Red thinks maybe a plow came by and bumped it by accident, even though the roads haven't been plowed. I suspect Red because his ass was wandering around outside last night. They form a new plan. Either have Lou drive them to town so they can take a bus back to Shadyside, or try calling a tow truck to pull the car back onto the road. When they all head back inside, they're greeted cheerily by Lou, who's excited to show them another mouse caught in a trap. Except this time, the poor thing nearly got snapped in two, and Stine describes that all its insides are oozing out. This graphic death delights Lou, and Ariel is growing more concerned about this man by the minute. Lou suggests they call a tow service, but when he picks up the phone, the line is dead, presumably due to the storm. This really enrages him though, and he throws the phone against the wall and starts stomping around the room. Doug loves seeing Lou upset because these two are quickly becoming full-blown enemies in their quest to be the resident alpha male. Lou mentions in passing that he has a Jeep, and the kids are all able to convince him to try driving to town on these unplowed roads because they really want to contact their parents, even though he thinks these road conditions are too much for the Jeep even. They all then spend 3 pages having another snowball fight while Lou gets the Jeep ready. Once in the barn, they spot a snowmobile, and Ariel notices that the Jeep has Alabama license plates, even though they're in Vermont. She finds this suspicious, but no one else seems to care, and they're more concerned about the second incoming storm. They all pile into the Jeep with Lou, and Ariel can smell the beer on his breath when it's not even lunchtime yet. Lou calls Shannon sweet cakes and wants her to sit next to him, which nearly causes Doug to lose his temper. When Lou goes to fire up the Jeep, bad news for everyone because it just sits there in silence and won't turn over. Lou has a hissy fit and storms out of the barn, leaving the kids to realize they're going to be trapped there another night. They all head back inside, except for Red, who wants to tinker with the Jeep a bit more. The snow is really coming down again, so everybody is starting to get on Ariel's level of worry because before all this, Doug, Shannon, and Red were being pretty casual about the whole situation. Ariel suggests that somebody take the snowmobile to town to get help, but Lou appears out of nowhere with a beer in hand to inform them that it hasn't run in years. He then goes on to share yet another story where somebody he knew died, and he thinks it's just hilarious. This time, he tells them about a friend who froze to death in their car and literally turned a shade of blue. Lou is also getting noticeably more gross with the girls, calling them things like Babe, Dollface, and Blondie, while also staring at them aggressively. It then occurs to Ariel that it's the middle of the afternoon, and they still haven't seen Eva, but when she asks Lou about her, he just wanders into the kitchen like he didn't hear her. Ariel decides to sneak upstairs and check on her, but when she doesn't get an answer outside their bedroom door, she decides just to walk on in. Ariel then starts screaming when she sees Eva sprawled out on the bed with her eyes staring blankly up at the ceiling. It turns out this is a bit of an overreaction though, because Eva's fine. She was just sleeping with her eyes open, as one does in the world of Stine. Ariel does see a big bruise on her right cheek though, and her eye is so swollen it can only partially open, so Lou really did hit her like Red thought. Eva pleads with her that she shouldn't be here, like she's trying to warn Ariel to get away while she still can. She heads back downstairs to make a sandwich and encounters Lou, who is full on slurring his words now, and he once again checks the phone, but this time he gets so angry that he literally tears it off the wall. We then move into the late afternoon, and the kids are just staring at the fire, while Red continues to work outside alone. Ariel is suddenly startled when she looks up and sees a mystery man in a ski mask peering in the window. The kids all move quickly, but the mystery man is too fast for them and vanishes by the time they get outside. There's fresh snow on the ground, so they should be able to track him easily, I would think, but Stine just has the footsteps mysteriously stop. Red then appears from upstairs, still pink from the cold, because he's somehow snuck upstairs without anybody noticing, which I think is suspicious. I also feel there's a solid chance the ski mask guy is Ariel's boyfriend Randy, because otherwise, why would his character even exist? I guess other than to be a red herring. The kids are all freaked out, but Lou just keeps insisting they must be seeing things and blows them off. Instead, he's starting to get weird with Doug, feeling on his bicep and passive-aggressively saying how much stronger he was when he was young. Then, when Doug reveals he's on the wrestling team, Lou challenges him to a match. This is all getting a little homoerotic out of nowhere, but I sincerely doubt Stine intends for it to read that way. Eva appears from the kitchen to try and defuse the situation, but Lou barks at her to shut her mouth or he'll shut it for her. Doug then decides he has no choice and agrees to wrestle Lou. Stine has done a nice job crafting two such arrogant macho characters that this really doesn't seem as odd as it is for them to be suddenly wrestling. It starts out playfully enough, but after Doug pins Lou, things change. As Doug is walking away, Lou snatches him by the leg, yanking him to the floor and smacking his head on the ground. Then Doug starts hollering because he thinks his leg's been broken. Ariel inspects his leg, since she's a wannabe doctor, and concludes he must have just sprained his knee badly, while Red tries to lead a drunk staggering Lou into the kitchen for some coffee. PSA, don't give drunk people coffee. All you're creating is a wide-awake drug, not sobering them up. The kids then all meet upstairs to figure out what to do next, and Red shares that he overheard Lou talking to Eva earlier. He heard Lou say that he plans on robbing them all and then leaving them stranded, while Eva was trying her best to talk him out of it. This is a weird setup because it's like, rob them of what? Clothes? They just went on a weekend ski trip. I can't imagine 4 teenagers having that much of value, especially in the early 90s before expensive cell phones, tablets, and laptops. Red then says he thinks the mystery guy in the ski mask must be working with Lou or something. He also shares that he found some pictures stuffed into her dresser drawer that had been clearly tucked away last minute, so he thinks this isn't even Lou and Eva's house, which lines up with Ariel's earlier suspicions. Red's grand plan is just for them all to leave right now. Luckily, he's actually fixed the Jeep and just didn't want Lou to find out, so now they just need to sneak away carefully. They spend the rest of the evening waiting for Lou to pass out from all the beers he's been downing, but this doesn't happen until well after midnight. The kids have been waiting in their rooms packed and ready to go since 9:30, so once he's finally asleep, they quickly sneak down the stairs. This proves to be more challenging than they expected, as the stairs loudly creak with every step they take. They put on their still damp gloves and jackets and proceed to head out, but at the last minute, Doug and Red decide it would be a good idea to grab a gun, just in case Lou appears. Ariel is really against this idea, but Doug ends up ignoring her and grabbing the revolver he was messing around with the previous day. Once outside, they're happy to see it stop snowing, but everything is really frozen over and is now extra crunchy. They spend quite a bit of time struggling with the frozen barn door, but eventually get in. However, before they're able to make their way to the Jeep, they spot Lou looming in the darkness holding a gun. Shannon screams and a gunshot rings out. Lou then drops to the ground. Everybody's in shock, including Doug, who fired the gun. Red makes the first move and turns Lou over, only to find it's not Lou, it's some random guy they've never seen before, and he's full on dead. They examine the guy, and it's odd that he's wearing a thin blue coat without a hat or gloves, considering how cold it is. He appears to be in his late 30s, and Ariel finally realizes he was the man from the photographs in the house they found earlier, so he's possibly the actual owner of this house. They debate going back inside to try calling the police, because Doug doesn't want to flee a murder scene when they hear footsteps approaching. Lou appears, announcing he heard a gunshot, and then races over to the body in a panic, declaring how this is Eva's brother Jake that they've managed to kill. Lou then digs into Jake's pockets and pulls out a ski mask that they saw earlier. Red and Lou end up taking Jake's dead body down into the cellar. Then all the kids just sit in the house as Lou tells Eva her brother's dead. Doug is having a pity party for himself when Shannon suddenly pipes up, wanting to know why Jake was out there with a gun in the first place, why he was creeping around with a ski mask earlier, and how he had gotten here if the roads were so terrible. Ariel realizes these are all valid questions and starts to think maybe Jake wasn't some innocent bystander. She then starts to reflect on the shooting itself and thinks there probably should have been more blood than the tiny trickle they saw, so she wants to go inspect the body herself. Red stops her from going, which puts some suspicion on him because why is he suddenly so insistent that Ariel stay away from the body? Lou then appears and tells no one to move and they'll be watching from the hallway. They all fall asleep eventually, except for Ariel, who around 6 a.m. decides to sneak on down into the cellar to inspect Jake's body. Stine gets dark with this, and soon Ariel is performing a full-on autopsy. I bent over Jake's body, my heart pounding. What should I look at first? The wound? Yes, the wound. I pulled open his coat and examined his shirt. The bullet had entered just above his stomach in the center of his ribcage. The front of the shirt had a gaping hole in it to match the one in his coat, as if a giant had grabbed hold of material and pulled off a big piece of it. The flannel was burned and frayed. The opening was as big as a cannonball. Leaning close, I struggled in the dim light. I examined the wound. It was much smaller than the hole in the shirt. And just as I remembered, there was practically no blood. A small amount had clotted around the circle of the wound, but the shirt wasn't soaked with blood and no blood had run down the chest. Interesting, I thought. Really interesting. I had a hunch now, an idea of what was going on, but I had to make sure. I backed up a bit, shifted my position, and picked up the corpse's hand. It was stiff and frozen, ice cold. I dropped it back to the floor. The entire arm was stiff. I felt the arm, I felt the shoulder, frozen. I looked at my watch, holding it up to read in the dim yellow light. It was 6:30. That meant Doug had shot Jake less than 6 hours ago. I guessed that a body couldn't get that stiff in that much time. No way. So why was Jake's body completely frozen? It wasn't cold enough for the body to freeze in this cellar. That meant that. It's becoming pretty clear that Jake was dead before Doug shot him, but Ariel's examination gets interrupted by some footsteps down the cellar stairs. This just ends up being Red, and Ariel still trusts him, so she's relieved, even though the evidence is starting to point towards him being in on this somehow. Once back upstairs, Ariel shares her theory with Doug and Shannon. She thinks Lou killed Jake earlier and is trying to pin it on them. She also thinks they propped up Jake's frozen dead body and stuck a gun in his hand on purpose. So when they all go to the cops, Doug confesses to shooting him, and they won't look much further into it. The next obvious connection to this would be that Red helped lure these kids to set this all up, but Ariel isn't there yet. She convinces everybody that they need to race back to the police before Lou can try and pin this all on them. Red wants to stay and confront Lou first, and really tries to discourage the others from leaving, but reluctantly heads to the Jeep with them eventually. Except not really. While walking out to the Jeep, Red suddenly vanishes, and when he returns he's carrying a gun. Ariel is confused, but Red just tells her he's sorry, but he and Lou worked too hard to set this whole thing up for them just to walk away. This is one of the few cases where I feel like the blurb on the back of the book kind of gave away the story for me. It just placed too much emphasis on Red that I came into this book suspicious of him the entire time, so it's kind of hard for me to gauge how good of a twist this really is. Red marches them back to the house and delivers them to Lou. Ariel lets him know that she figured their plan out, so now Lou is stumped on what to do with them. We then learn that Red is Eva and Jake's brother, and that Lou killed Jake because he cheated them out of an inheritance. Eva was down for this plan and is now getting cold feet and causing issues for Lou and Red. She shares that she already called the police and they'll be at the house in 20 minutes. Lou is busy screaming at Eva when Ariel decides to chuck 2 icy snowballs at him. They've frozen overnight, so it's like the equivalent of chucking a rock at him. This stuns him enough that he drops the gun in the snow, causing both Red and Doug to die for it. Doug is able to grab the gun and chuck it across the yard. Ariel, Shannon, and Doug then start racing for the barn so they can hop into the Jeep and escape. This is a poorly thought out plan though, because once they're in the barn, they remember that Red had the keys. Ariel then decides to try out the snowmobile since Lou and Red lied about everything else. It fires up right away and she charges straight towards Lou and Red, who are standing in the entryway. She hopes that Shannon and Doug can use this as a distraction to race down the road, and lucky for her, Lou and Red just start to follow after her. Ariel then heads straight for the frozen lake, which still has some patches that aren't fully frozen, so she's trying her best to stay on the solid ice. Lou and Red are still chasing after her for some reason, like they could possibly catch a snowmobile. Ariel ends up turning too sharply and crashes the snowmobile, knocking the wind out of her. This allows for Lou and Red to actually catch up with her, just as they start to hear police sirens in the distance. Lou and Red shout back and forth for a bit about whose fault all this is, as Ariel tries to crawl away quietly from them. When Red finally decides he's going to take Ariel hostage, she starts to run blindly further out onto the frozen lake when she hears a loud crack. She turns and spots Red falling through the ice. He flails around in the icy water, and Ariel actually tries to reach out and help him, but it's too late. He dips under the ice and never resurfaces. Ariel then watches as the police arrest Lou and Eva on the shoreline. Ariel still has to make it across all this ice though, and has her own tense few pages creeping across the cracking ice before resorting to a full-blown sprint into Doug's arms. We then jump to later that evening, with Ariel, Doug, and Shannon all cheerfully driving home, excited that they'll be home before dinner. The police had interrogated each of them, called their parents, pulled Doug's car out of a ravine, and sent them on their way. Ariel is having a grand old time in the back seat, joking about having another ski weekend next week, and Doug tops all this happy nonsense off by reaching into the glove compartment and tossing a hidden snowball at Ariel. So that's how this one ends. Lou and Eva have been arrested for murder, and the kids end the book with a snowball fight, like they weren't just kidnapped by 3 murderers for like 3 days. Overall, I thought Ski Weekend was another great read. I really enjoyed how uncomfortable it was having these teenagers trapped with a mysterious violent drunk in the middle of nowhere. Ariel was a solid protagonist who was easy to root for, and I loved that Stine had her go and perform an autopsy in the cellar. In a lot of ways, it was a pretty simple story, with most of the tension just coming from Stine's focus on the isolated setting. It does get batshit in the last couple chapters, with some big leaps in logic, but that's to be expected with these books and part of what makes them fun. I'm going to give this one 5 out of 5 mousetraps. I really enjoyed the tense atmosphere of this one, even if the villain's motive was super convoluted and red was a little obvious. Okay, for Fear Street deaths in Ski Weekend, we had just one. This was when Old Red fell through the ice and met his demise evil villain style. Jake died too, but this was more for the events of our story, so it doesn't count. This brings our Fear Street series total to 8 deaths. In Fat 90s Moments, we just had a measly 2 this week. These included Hulk Hogan and tape answering machines. This brings our Fear Street series total to 58. Tainted Love is back once again, although it's mild and not very integral to the story. This is just Ariel and Randy's relationship, which is clearly on the rocks with all the fighting and her kissing other boys. It mostly served as a red herring for the reader. This gives us a Fear Street series total of 10. Cheesy Ending is back with a vengeance after missing the past couple weeks. This time, we ended this traumatizing weekend with a cheerful snowball fight in the car ride home. This brings our Fear Street series total to 7. Well, that's it for Ski Weekend. I had a great time reading this book, and I felt like Lou was going to snap at any moment. Next week, we're looking at the Fire Game, and I have no idea what to expect with this one. The cover makes it look exciting enough though, and maybe another venture into the Fear Street woods. Let me know in the comments what you thought of Ski Weekend. Did you like this one as much as me? Did you think Randy was possibly involved too? What did you think of that sudden wrestling match? Also, what are your thoughts on my snowy horror clips this week? Considering it was 105 while I read this, I appreciated the snowy escape from the heat. Anyways, as always, thanks again for watching, and make sure you subscribe for
the pride, the love,